to a presentation today from the Community College Workforce Consortium. This panel was originally scheduled for the face-to-face CCWC meeting that was to be held at Lone Star Community College in Houston in September and was unfortunately canceled at that point. I don't want to miss an opportunity today to say that if we have some Lone Star folks on the line, your colleagues continue to think about you and send you warm wishes as your community recovers from the hurricane. We are really glad that Eric and the panelists could find a common time in their schedules to share their expertise with us about apprenticeship, and also pleased that some of you could join us today. We will take questions during a Q&A session near the end of the webinar, but please feel free to write your questions in the chat box as we go along. If you want to direct them to one of the individuals on the panel, just say that in your question, please. There's a lot to share, so let me get right to an introduction of our moderator, and he will in turn introduce the panelists to you. Today, our moderator is Eric Selesnow. He currently works for Job for the Future as a senior advisor for the Center for Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning. He formerly and recently was Deputy Assistant Secretary at the Department of Labor for the Employment and Training Administration. So Eric, let's get started and you can introduce your panelists.
Great. Well, Becky, thank you very much. And Kelsey, thanks for organizing this. And my panelists, thanks for making the time. This is Eric Selesnow live from a hotel room somewhere in Milwaukee. I just got here a minute ago. And if you see me leaning forward like this and looking at my screen, my computer is dead. And so I'm doing this on a handheld. So God bless technology. And I think that won't slow us down a bit. So thanks for joining, everyone. I'm joined today by an outstanding panel. I have Melissa Infusino from Long Beach City College, Director of Workforce Development, Dr. Rebecca Lake from William Rainey Harper College outside of Chicago, and James Carnes Sr. And James is an apprenticeship and training representative in ATR with the United States Department of Labor. So I welcome them here today. But I want to welcome all of you, and thanks for making the time to join us today. When we can't do it in person, we'll adapt and we'll do it electronically. So hopefully you'll find this helpful, and there's plenty of time for questions. And I guess we're recording it, so at some point it'll be posted for others to use. But a lot of what we're talking about today is the potential, realizing the potential of apprenticeships and how community colleges can help facilitate success. And I guess my opening statement is the potential is here. The future is here with apprenticeship. And I'm going to spend the first few minutes laying a little bit of a background, talking about where we've been the last 3.5, 4 years with apprenticeship in this country, what we've seen happening with a lot of intermediaries and sponsors across the country, and I'll get to that momentarily. Talk a little bit about, and you'll hear a little bit about some exciting things colleges are doing, and workforce boards are doing, and other intermediaries are doing. So. And will do in the future, because there's some changes coming to the national apprenticeship system that I think will provide more opportunity, particularly for community colleges, but others as well. So, excuse me. So I'm just going to hop right into it, right? The future is here with apprenticeships. And one of the first things I like to say is we have to be very precise in our language about apprenticeships these days. There's a couple of different levels and definitions, and there's a lot of misunderstanding in the workforce world and in the greater world about what apprenticeships are, the interplay or the interaction of on-the-job training and learning and practical application and the related technical instruction. And so when I use the term apprenticeship today, I'm be mostly speaking about registered apprenticeship. Those are programs that are registered with the U.S. Department of Labor or within a certain set of states that have state apprenticeship agencies. They typically require around 2,000 hours of on-the-job training each year and about 144 hours of related technical instruction, and that's where the colleges come in. What I'm not talking about is a work experience for 4 hours a week, and then we call that an apprenticeship. Many folks do that. That's not what we're talking about today. I'm also not talking about a high school experience where they're working, 8 hours a week on a job and they call their folks apprentices. I'm talking about registered apprenticeships with U.S. Department of Labor and state apprenticeship agencies. I'll give that a caveat by saying, that there may be some changes to that given the President's executive order on apprenticeship. But for the purposes of this conversation and where I think community colleges offer the most value to the system and where it can be most valuable to them is being a sponsor, intermediary, or significant partner in the world of registered apprenticeships. So let me give a little bit of background, then I'll talk about, let me talk about JFF first. So I left the Department of Labor January 20th at noon. I was part of the previous administration. The new team came in, and they're implementing programs now. Shortly after I left federal service, I landed at the at the Jobs for the Future, where our leadership at JFF saw the national interest in apprenticeship, and we decided to establish something called the Center for Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning. We're a hub. Many of you know JFF. JFF has always been a leader in sort of career pathways, accelerated opportunities, career pathways for both youth and adults. We do a lot of work with community colleges all over the country and a lot of other projects. But we also have a lot of expertise in both apprenticeship. We're the recipients of 4 previous Department of Labor apprenticeship grants and contracts. And also we have a Pathways to Prosperity network and a significant group of folks working on other forms of work-based learning. So we do apprenticeship work and other forms of work-based learning, and that's an important concept to understand. So we established this center to be 4 things. One, we want to be a hub for the field. If you want information on apprenticeship, you have to go to a lot of different places to get it. The United States Department of Labor has a pretty darn good website with a lot of resources, but elsewhere you have to go to get promising practices or best practices or research or program summaries. You got to look all over the place to do that. So we want to be a hub and collect and develop a library, if you will, of resources, almost a one-stop opportunity for folks to go and look for resources. And then we want to do 3 things through the center. We want to work with employers on developing apprenticeship programs across the country. We want to work with states and locals. And when I say states and locals, typically it's an ecosystem of partners, either at the state level or the regional level, regional-local level, that come together, colleges, employers, workforce boards, community-based organizations, and others. And so we want to help provide some support and assistance to that growing community. And lastly, we want to help at JFF develop intermediaries, folks who can be in the space of aggregating employers, help them navigate the apprenticeship system, help them figure out how to do the standards and sponsor programs, and get them much more involved in the game. So, and there's different levels of that too, but certainly there's a growing intermediary community and sponsor community, and we'll talk a little bit about the difference between those 2 things, and you'll hear from our friend Dr. Lake at Harper College about her experience in that space. So the Center for Apprenticeship and Workforce Development is up. We're launching it formally on November 9th with a big event in Washington, D.C. Hope some of you are coming, where we're going to celebrate apprenticeship and work-based learning and lift up some programs to do that. So real quickly, and then we'll get to our panelists, let me just set the table a little bit. Apprenticeship in the United States has often been, it's been around for a couple hundred years. We know that George Washington, Ben Franklin, Paul Revere were apprentices. You probably didn't know that Elvis was an apprentice. He was an electrical apprentice. And so we have a long history in this country of various forms of apprenticeship. Wisconsin in 1911 established the first legislation of a state to do a state-sponsored apprenticeship program. And the United States, the federal government, Congress passed the National Apprenticeship Act of 1937, sometimes referred to as the Fitzgerald Act, who was a sponsoring congressman. And the National Apprenticeship Act, which governs all registered apprenticeship programs, just celebrated, if you will, this year. Its 80th anniversary in August of this year. And there, by the way, there's a link on our website if you want to watch that that fascinating webinar, by the way. So the last 3 or 4 years in this country, there's been a resurgence in apprenticeship. You all have heard about it. You've seen the Department of Labor has invested up to this point, the last few years, $265 million in apprenticeship. Historic investments in apprenticeship that have never happened before. $175 million went through the American Apprenticeship Initiative. Some of you may be grantees. Another $90 million was an historic appropriation by Congress in 2017. For, in a very bipartisan way, Congress appropriated money for apprenticeship. Never really happened before. And then this year, they appropriated another $95 million to apprenticeship. So Congress is there. These investments are spurring innovation and programs all over the country. You'll hear about some of those today. But I will say this country has had sort of a, and certainly the workforce and education systems have had sort of a very uneven relationship with apprenticeship. We have seen a lot of people who don't understand the system, or more importantly, believe apprenticeships are only in building trades and crafts, only in tool and die makers, only in the trades and crafts, and are only sponsored by labor unions. We know that's not the case. There's thousands of apprenticeship programs out there that have been out there for years, and the last 3 or 4 years, the Obama administration made apprenticeship a high priority, and the reason they did that was because of all the different outcomes from apprenticeship programs, all the different outcomes from workforce programs, and you all know what they are: different career pathways, industry sector work, industry partnerships, contract learning, contract training, ITAs through the one-stop system. Throughout all of that buffet of different workforce programs out there, none of them, I'll repeat, none of them had the outcomes that apprenticeship does. Higher completion rates of well over 50%. I think you all in community colleges are aware of some of the completion rate challenges we have, but in apprenticeship, they've been higher than 2 years and 4 years. The employment rates are high. The average earnings are $60,000 per year, and the job retention rates are off the charts at about 89–90%. So the outcomes have been really positive in many of those programs, and I think the interesting thing is, nobody owns apprenticeship, right? It's not owned by labor unions or building trades or manufacturers. It is a earn and learn job training system with applied learning that seems to spark great results. So that was, I think, the gist of the Obama administration's investment and interest. And you may recall in the January of 2014 State of the Union address, President Obama at that time made a national goal of double and diversifying the number of apprentices in this country, and doubling from 375,000 to 750,000, and the Department of Labor is well on their way of meeting those numbers. And the diversity was twofold. One is to diversify the occupations that apprenticeship is in, and two, to diversify the people who have opportunities to participate in apprenticeship. So you will now hear about and see other programs in the finance and insurance industry, in cybersecurity, in healthcare, and advanced manufacturing. So the apprenticeship model can be used in many other different occupations. Again, it is the model of on-the-job applied learning with the related technical instruction. And it is a job, right? You can't have apprenticeship unless you have a job. So, that double and diversification and those investments in the previous administration held. And then lo and behold, there's a change in the administration, and certainly the United States Department of Labor is still front and center on apprenticeship. The new Secretary Acosta is an advocate for it. The administration has laid down a marker of making it easier for businesses to participate in apprenticeship, and continued investment. I believe the President of the executive order mentioned $200 more million, the $95 million from Congress, an additional $105 million. So that, I'm so encouraged that the apprenticeship conversation continues at the federal level. I know many states are continuing to invest and get engaged in apprenticeship. So we're in the middle of a transformation of the apprenticeship system. I come with one warning. We've been down this road, maybe not this far, but slightly before. We had a School to Work Act under the Clinton administration, and a National Youth Administration Act under the first George Bush. and I don't think the system was ready for it and didn't go very far. Many of you older folks on the phone recall the School to Work Act. But now I think things have aligned. I think colleges, workforce boards, employers, much more sophisticated in their approach. They see the outcomes and they see the benefit of apprenticeship. So we're in the middle of this transformation. I think a lot more companies are using it. You'll hear about that today. And without further ado, I think we're going to move to our panel to sort of signify how that transformation has happened, where it's happening across the country. And I think most importantly, I think the numbers are about 75% of all the training, maybe it's not that high, but roughly, of all the training related to apprenticeship happens with community colleges. Thus, labor unions and other folks do significant amount of training and really outstanding training, but community colleges have really gotten into the game of participating in this, and we'll hear about that. So, as with any workforce program, it requires partnerships, and certainly with apprenticeship, you need employers, you need training providers, intermediaries are helpful, workforce boards can have a role, and they do in certain communities, and community-based organizations do. And if you look at your traditional apprenticeship concept, so let's take the electrical workers, for example. They have a joint labor program, so they have all their employers organized. They have an agreement to do training. They provide their own training as a training provider, and they find a pipeline of workers in the community. And likewise, with non-labor programs, it's very similar. They aggregate the demand of multiple employers, bring in typically a community college to do the training, and then work with other community-based organizations, workforce boards, or others to bring in a pipeline of workers. So a number of different models out there, but it has to be a partnership, and we like to call it the ecosystem of apprenticeship. So now let's talk to our panel, because one, I'm getting winded, and two, I get boring after a while, so we'll move right along. And our first guest today is Melissa Infusino, and Melissa's the Director of Workforce Development for Long Beach City College. That's in California, and Melissa has a long and sterling history. She runs a large workforce development unit at the college. She's got a staff, works with instructors who design and deliver over $6 million in grant-funded career-focused training programs for entering and existing workers. She's been at this a long time, not implying age or anything, but she's very experienced at doing these sort of programs in the workforce and public space. So, Melissa, thank you for joining us today. Can you tell us a little bit about Long Beach City Community College and your work there?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Eric, and thanks everybody for your interest in our work. And good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are. In particular, I'm going to talk about our construction pre-apprenticeship program, but I'll also mention that it gave us the courage, having started that about a year and a half ago, to also start a non-union affiliated pre-apprenticeship heavy-duty diesel program with local employers. So we've used this foray into pre-apprenticeship work to really try out this work and expand it and build on it. But Long Beach City College has been doing economic and workforce development for a number of years, and the apprenticeship program and pre-apprenticeship programs are actually newer to us. We've worked with employers in a variety of different ways, providing direct training, working with our workforce investment boards, and integrating employers into our credit programs. But this pre-apprenticeship construction program started in January of 2016, and this was a partnership we started with the building trades, and it was funded by a Department of Labor tax grant. And under the program, we do the outreach, we do the recruitment, we do the training, and we do the job placement. So it really is soup to nuts. And this program has been particularly important as we're reaching communities that were underrepresented in the unions and are helping them into the pipeline. As I mentioned, we do partner with our local WIB, which we do on this program, as well as community organizations that are providing some of the case management services, which is not our core competency, as well as some additional outreach and placement support. I mentioned that this was a tax grant-funded program, and it continues to be a grant-funded program. We're looking to transition this into a non-credit program, and the support for the program helped to or we manage it rather with a grant manager, a coordinator, 2 student workers, and a team of 4 to 5 faculty and hourly instructors. The program itself, again, is a pre-apprenticeship program, is 174 hours of training, and embedded in that we have hands-on training, we have industry certifications like the union, the National Building Trades Multi-Craft Core Curriculum. We also developed physical agility training that we learned from the employers that we needed to add in, which we did. We've got OSHA certification, CPR, and first aid. We did this really, the whole program was in response to the reinvigorated construction industry here in Southern California, and it is dominated by the trade unions. So the apprenticeship programs are really housed within the trades themselves. So it doesn't make sense for us to bring that into the community college, but it does make a lot of sense for us to create a pipeline directly into the unions and the apprenticeships. We also developed it in response to the local hire mandates that were built into the project labor agreements that occur on public projects in the region between the labor, between the unions and the city, for instance, or ports or our metropolitan transit agencies. And what those really mean for local hiring is that our publicly bond-funded work has a local hire mandate anywhere between 20 and 30%. So that means that contractors that bid on the work must hire locally. And so where are those local employers going to come from? And they are tracked by, or employees rather, and they are tracked by zip code. So part of the role we were filling is providing that pipeline into those projects. So because of the dynamics, we work really closely with the public agencies, public work departments to understand what projects are coming up, which trades will be important, with the project labor administrators and then the unions. We integrate the unions into the apprenticeship program, or rather into our pre-apprenticeship program here. They visit the classroom. We go out to the apprenticeship training centers. They're very much a part of our operation. We have instructors that come from the union as well and also teach at the apprentice training centers. Our graduates are apprentices in a number of local trade unions, including the laborers, the pallet drivers, painters, and plumbers, and others. We provide students resume and interview prep. We also found we needed to create a math prep for them and provide additional math tutoring. A lot of the unions have a higher bar when it comes to math. We also created a basic adult education class that helps students to apply and go through the union application process, which is different for each of the trades. So we had a lot of lessons learned over the course of the last year and a half, and we were able, because this is a not-for-credit program, to adjust quickly and to really respond to what we were seeing students doing and also what industry needed, and that's allowed us to calibrate and I think bring it into a non-credit program, as I mentioned, which we're working on now. So I'm happy to answer questions.
Sure. So I think one of the issues across the country is, what is the role of pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship? And I think I get this question a lot, and you can't have a pre-apprenticeship unless you have an apprenticeship for them to go into. I've been all over the country. I've seen the workforce highway littered with some really bad pre-apprenticeship programs because they never went into an apprenticeship. So is it fair to say that your programs will not only prepare but articulate? I know they don't get automatic entry into a full-fledged apprenticeship program, but they articulate to the minimum requirements of entry into a pre-apprenticeship, into the apprenticeship program?
Absolutely, and in fact, that's the goal ideally of the program. Obviously, we want students to have employment, and we're going to help them have employment if it is in a non-union shop while they're waiting for the apprenticeship process. But our primary goal, because we use the MC3 curriculum, which the foundational piece of this is the National Building Trades curriculum, it really is preparing students for an understanding of what a union apprenticeship is about and then applying directly into those specific unions. And so we will have representatives from the individual unions come to class, speak about the process, and we prepare students on whether it's testing, interviewing, or getting sponsored, how to go about doing that and making their way directly into the field that they're particularly interested in as well. So making sure that that articulation happens. And so we're tracking the job placement rate as well and working with the WIDs to do that articulation. And then we're being held accountable along with the contractors through the city project labor agreements. And so we're trying to keep track of where the students are going and where they're coming from, because again, for those local hiring requirements, we need to make sure that local residents are actually making it onto these jobs, into these union shops.
So really glad to hear that you've done this work through your tax grant and connected it to that level of involvement in the community. I will say the National Association of Building Trades has a huge effort across the country. You know, I talked a little bit about diversity earlier. You know, women represented in non-traditional occupations or in apprenticeship period is about 7%, much less than that in the construction industry. Certainly people of young men and women of color, you know, while their numbers are slightly better, also not as high as we'd like to see them. So it sounds like a really concerted effort working with the Workforce Board, and I would imagine other community organizations, to diversify the pipeline. Is that what the unions are hoping for, and is that what you're able to deliver?
Absolutely. And the population in Long Beach and the poverty rates are pretty high, and we're able to actually pull from communities. I'll give you some specific examples of communities that are not necessarily being reached by the unions. We have women on our team, and we specifically use women to recruit women. We also have bilingual, Spanish-speaking folks, and we go out to churches, bilingual churches. We go out to African-American churches, to congregations there, and speak to mothers groups, family groups, youth groups about the program. We have put flyers up in laundromats. We have gone to community organizations, you name it, we've been there, our flyers are out there. And we also have been really aggressive on social media and have even used some of their tools to do some targeted advertising. So we've been able to try to reach different populations where they are and really go to them and bring them into this process.
Great. So, you know, this is probably not an unusual conversation to community colleges. Some probably have done maybe related things like pre-apprentices, but maybe not as well organized or structured as you put together. Are you also doing other apprenticeship programs at this point, or are you just focused at this stage on the pre-apprentice pathway work?
We have just secured funding to start another pre-apprenticeship program, which I mentioned at the top, the heavy-duty diesel program, and this leads into an apprenticeship with Quinn Caterpillar, and they actually have an apprenticeship up with a Northern California college and would like to do something down in Southern California. So we're starting with a pre-apprenticeship program and are going to look longer term at the employers that are here in the real demand that's down here in Southern California to see if it makes sense for us to actually bring in a full apprenticeship program at Long Beach City College. So we've kind of dipped our toes in with construction and really got a sense for what it's like and how labor intensive it is or isn't to build these relationships and to do the work. And then now we're starting with another pre-apprenticeship program that will lead potentially directly into bringing an apprenticeship program in-house. So I think that there are other opportunities that we'd really like to explore.
Great, great. All right, Melissa, stand by. Melissa Infusino from Long Beach City College, stand by. We'll come back to you. Let's travel across the country to outside of Chicago. Sorry, Rebecca, I forget the name of the town, but we're going to be joined by Dr. Rebecca Lake. She's the Dean of Workforce Development. She's the Dean of Workforce and Economic Development at William Rainey Harper College outside of Chicago. And Rebecca's up to her neck in apprenticeship programs. And Rebecca, you don't do pre-apprenticeship, you do apprenticeship programs.
Yeah, but you never know that. I've heard that great speech from Melissa, so I just may want to stick my toe in that water too. Right. But
yeah.
Go ahead.
So Melissa describes sort of a very traditional sort of building trades, working with the union sort of program. You're doing things a little bit differently up at Harper College. Tell us about it.
Yes, we are. Well, luckily, we had TAC grants, too. You know, those TAC grants were very useful because we learned lots of good lessons that we could take on forward and bounce off them. So what happened to us was we were lucky enough, we're outside of Schaumburg, outside of Chicago in Schaumburg, Illinois. That is where the Zurich Insurance Company North American headquarters is. And so Zurich came to us and said in early 2015, we would like to work with you with registered apprenticeship programs. Of course, they're from Switzerland, and they've been doing that over there a long time. Here in America, nobody really has been doing it, and definitely not in insurance, in these non-traditional roles. And so they decided that they would actually try it, and they would write an apprenticeship program. They came to us for the related training instruction. And so I worked with them about what that might look like and be. And we came up with, of course, all of our registered apprenticeship programs here at Harper, except for the brand new one, which is cybersecurity, which I'll talk about in a moment. They're all AAS degrees. So we worked with the program coordinator of business administration and Zurich together and made sure that we had an AAS degree in business with a concentration with general insurance. And so we have done that for 2 years, and this December, Zurich will be graduating 19 registered apprentices, the first in the country in general insurance. So that kind of got me thinking about, well, why and how come community colleges can't be this program sponsor? Why can't we write them? We have employers coming to us in many different areas saying, you know, we need to find good, talented employees so that we can hire them and grow our companies. And so we took that as a good sign with Zurich, and so we've become a program sponsor, and we have currently 4 registered apprenticeship programs at Harper. The 2 are in advanced manufacturing, and those are doing very well. But we're becoming very well known with non-traditionals. And for example, we have general insurance, and then we looked at supply chain. I have just sent in one for banking and finance because banking and finance came to us, and this is key. Eric made a point to reiterate that, but that it all starts with the employers. And the employers came to us and said, we can't find those guys to be the middle management to run those corner banks and become loan officers. Can you help us? And of course we said, sure, we can help you. And so we got lots of companies together, and the bankers and the Illinois Bankers Association, and so we have now have put in for approval a registered apprenticeship program in banking and finance. We also had the automobile dealers come to us and said, we can't find the guys to stay with us, become the salesman, and move into other kinds of managerial roles in the companies. And we are finishing writing that. I'm finishing that up, and it's about sales and sales merchandising. So it really is important that you keep your ear to the ground. It's about what employers want. And so now we're doing it for graphic arts print production. We're also writing one for private security. I just got approved for cybersecurity, and that one I wrote out of CE, and it's using the CompTIA credentials. So there are many different ways, but non-traditional registered apprentices are certainly coming to the forefront. Not only do they have, as for 80 years, the building construction trades or shipbuilders or UAW, but now we're finding that companies really want to hire people that they just can't find, and so many different varieties of industries are coming to us, and we're fulfilling that need.
Sure. So I call that employers are growing their own,
yep.
And they use apprenticeship to grow their own because they get to train them not only in the technical and occupational skill, but you know, everything from the related soft skills, safety on the job, and what have you. But so let me ask you. I want to ask you 3 quick questions, and then we'll move on to the other things that I want to chat with you about. So, you know, Harper's figured out how to do this with employers, and it's for credit. And so at the end, so let's take Zurich Insurance. As I understand it, Rebecca, the worker Zurich hired these 25 people. They're graduating 19. They moved them around to different divisions within their claims division. In their nearby office, they go to your campus, what is it, 2 days a week?
2 days a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays.
All right, and at the conclusion of 2 years, they have rotated through different occupations within Zurich, and they've completed their requirements for an associate's degree, right?
That's correct.
Credit.
Yep.
All right, so that is, I mean, I just want that to sink in on folks, right? That's a really big change from traditional thinking of non-credit, you know, apprentice, well, we'll put it in the non-credit side, and you know, the degree side. So you've been able to organize your courses around that, working with the employer.
Right, and that's a good point you made, Eric, which was community colleges actually can do this, and faculty don't have to reinvent the wheel. You simply make sure you have employers that want in that area, and we all have these associate's degrees in business administration, and so then if the employer wants that, the faculty already have an AAS degree, and so there are ways that you can configure that so it becomes an AAS degree but meets the requirements for that employer. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It is doable for what you have. We just needed 4 courses in insurance, and luckily I asked Zurich where do they get their extra national credentials, because we put them in all of our AAS degrees, and it was with the Institute. So faculty got together with the Institute and wrote 4 additional insurance courses, that concentration, which we'll share with anybody. You can have those courses. But it makes it very nice and very easy to adapt what you have into what the employers need.
So it's not creating an entire new program. It's really adapting and stretching what you already do in your division of workforce.
Exactly right, yeah.
And you've been talking to other colleges about this, Rebecca. I know we've done a couple of conferences together. I know you did an accelerator with other colleges. Is there take-up? Do they find it applicable?
Right, yeah. All of the community colleges now in Georgia are program sponsors, so they're able to do all that paperwork for employers, bring employers together, and put them through all of their, I think they have 12 or 13 community colleges in Georgia, so they're all program sponsors. Lots of colleges, many colleges are coming up to visit us for a couple of days. Just got done with Gulf Coast, Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College came up to find out how we did, because they just left last week, so I remember them, you know, and colleges across the country, Iowa and lots of Florida are coming up, West Virginia, as you well know. And so many of these colleges are picking up. Albuquerque Community College was from Albuquerque area, because they're understanding that it's a win for a community college too. Not only do we meet our mission, but you're able to have sustainable income, because the companies pay for, I have it set up, so companies pay the college education of the students. So they graduate with an AAS degree. They already have a job, so they have 2 or 3 years experience, depends on your program, and zero debt, and they're ready to take off and grow with your company.
Right. So let me get to the elephant in the room, right? So people on the phone might be saying, oh, a sponsorship for an apprenticeship program, oh my goodness, it's so complicated, it's so burdensome. There's a lot of myth and misinformation regarding the sponsorship program, but essentially I think the outcome of that is you've taken some of the burden away from the employer to the college is helping to sponsor the program. But can you tell us a little bit what sponsorship means? We'll talk to James about this as well in a minute, but you've taken on the role of being an apprenticeship sponsor, which is really helpful to employers. And if we're going to expand it in this country, we need intermediaries and sponsors to develop. But tell us a little bit about what that means to be a sponsor for a program. And is it that crazy difficult, Rebecca, really?
Right. The answer is actually no. I think you have to, but you have to start it right. And so when you're looking at a registered apprenticeship program, let's take the supply chain, for example, or the Illinois Bankers Association. So you have to bring companies in, bankers in, so that they all can look at those competencies, because we write competencies so we know at the end that I ask the question, what is it you want your people to be able to do when they get done with this AAS degree in this registered apprenticeship program? And so they tell me. And so you want to bring them in the front part, but essentially gathering them together so everybody knows what the courses are and that sort of thing. Companies have to agree to hire the person and to let them off work to come to school. For these non-traditional, they're truly in, most of them, they go to work Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and on Tuesdays and Thursdays they come to school. After that, we talk to them about what is their salary and what those salaries would be over the couple of years, because as we know, registered apprentices must have a salary, a wage increase, and so to represent the skills and knowledge gain. And so we keep hold of that, and we understand that. But we put but what we do for all of these different companies, we have like 28 with us now, is that we pull them all in and make sure that we have data and information about their apprentice, and then we put it up into the RAPIDS database. We keep track of all the grades. We work with the companies. We never leave them alone. We're out there a lot, and we say, so where's the log, so we know exactly what he did or what projects she was doing and how many hours they were on that. We make sure that they understand that they need to assess them, and so we have trained the trainer kind of a little program, so all the mentors get to come and understand how do you evaluate, how do you assess, that sort of thing. But essentially, we put once the paperwork is done and you're a program sponsor, the main thing is that we put everything in the RAPIDS database, and we do keep an assessment. We have to keep kind of a handle, because we're the program sponsor on all of our companies out there. So we always make sure that they are paying their student, that the apprentice, for example, is working in the job which they're hired. They're not sweeping the floor or answering the phones. They truly are working as in general insurance or in the banking area. And so we keep a handle on them, on faculty too, because we make sure we have what we found was really very useful was an academic coach. And so we make sure that we know where the students are with their grades and finishing their homework and all of that sort of thing. So it's not hard for us, but if you put those things in place up front, it's very easy to be very successful and sustainable. The one thing that is most important on the back end for community colleges, not only does it help us make our mission, but it's income for the college and completion rates, which you never had people at. Advanced manufacturing is graduating people now, and so those are very important to us. But we have to make sure that things are sustainable, and we have done that by charging a flat fee for the entire program and all the extra kinds of things that we do in-house.
All right, and so there's employers across the country. I mean, this is the challenge between U.S. programs and European programs. And European programs, the government covers the cost of the related training, the classroom instruction, and the U.S. it doesn't. Many companies across the country, like Zurich Insurance and others, it's worth it to them to cover the cost of the related technical instruction and get those people to those associate's degree level. In other places, people use other combinations of funding to do that. But many times employers are in fact paying it. So you listen to the employer, you gather the skills and the competencies they need, you get to know them a little bit, and then you craft a program of study, of standards, of goals and objectives of the training, and then file the paperwork. And in your case, are you filing the apprenticeship paperwork with the U.S. Department of Labor, or is it with the state of Illinois? With the U.S. Department of Labor.
Yeah. Well, we're an OA state, so it goes in the RAPIDS database and up,
All right. So that is an excellent example of a college working closely now, with several industries. Hey, can you give us a glimpse of your cybersecurity real quick before we go to James?
Yeah, it's Yes, and a matter of fact, we just had the Vice President of CompTIA in to talk about this, to taking it across the country, because we already have it as a registered program. But for example, the first level of it would have CompTIA A+ and CompTIA Network and some web maintenance, but it's all through CE, and it's all based on the CompTIA credentials. So we have a feeling that it's going to be quite useful across the country, because CompTIA is very well known for its server security and cybersecurity analyst kinds of credentials. So we're really looking forward to having people share this. Community colleges can have it, because CompTIA is going to start to help us just share it with everybody.
Great.
Yep.
Well, really interesting, non-traditional model in apprenticeship,
right.
Very different than what Long Beach is doing. Critically, two very important pathways for students and results for employers. So, Rebecca, thank you so much for that. Stand by, and we'll get back to you. So let's travel. Where are we going? We're going back to we're going to Texas now. We're going to be joined by James Karn Sr. James is an apprenticeship training representative, also known as an ATR with the United States Department of Labor. He works in the Texas region and beyond. And James, welcome today. So tell us what's going on at the Department of Labor these days.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, actually, everyone. Thank you. It's a very busy time. Of course, as Eric mentioned earlier, expansion, one of the key watchwords in the department at this time in the Office of Apprenticeship. One of the things, though, that after listening to today's panel, it confirms what I thought we should be doing, and we're doing both models in Houston right now. We have an apprenticeship program, and the way that we went about the apprenticeship program and tying it to an apprenticeship program.
We're having a little trouble hearing you, James. I don't know if you're getting closer to the mic or somebody go on mute.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Basically, we geo-map within the school district industries that already had existing apprenticeship programs, and approached those existing apprenticeship programs and created the articulation agreements necessary to create a supporting pre-apprenticeship program. So that's the method that works for us, because it's a kind of sprawling area. One of the other things that is going on is one of our colleges on the north end of the county is about to become an apprenticeship program sponsor. What's really attractive about that when you market it is the fact that most employers don't really want to interact with us. Okay? Can everyone still hear me?
Yeah. So you're still a little distant, though, James.
Yeah. For whatever reasons, many employers don't want to interact with representatives from the U.S. Department of Labor. When a community college becomes a sponsor, you're actually acting as an intermediary between the employer and us. And I think that it's a very attractive feature in that most of the time the technical know-how and knowledge is already possessed at the colleges. We found that out. We have many employers who try to conduct their own training, and within a year, we're referring them to a community college. It's what you do for a living. So, Eric, one other, and everyone, there's one other thing, and I would like you to just jot this down if you hadn't heard about it, is Bulletin 2016-26, okay, issued by the Office of Apprenticeship. If you cannot locate it, contact me, and I will forward you a copy. It goes into detail as far as community colleges and their roles. I think that it's going to make apprenticeship more accessible to employers and to employees who will in turn become apprentices. I think that it's going to be one of the key tools to use for expansion. And I really don't have a whole lot else to regurgitate because Melissa and them have done a great job today.
Yeah, but let's expand that. And first of all, and for folks, it's if you're looking at your screen, that bulletin is up on the screen, and we can make sure people get that. I would also refer people to the Department of Labor website for training employee, some things called TEGLES. Many of you know them, training and employment guidance letters, training and employment notices. There's one on pre-apprenticeship. There's one on apprenticeship that was just issued before I left, January 16, that sort of offers additional guidance on WIOA, on pre-apprenticeship, on apprenticeships, on the articulation of pre-apprentice to apprenticeship, and a variety of other topics. So, so there's a lot of examples about that. So, but what has really been noticeable, James, is the last 3 or 4 years, the Department of Labor seems to have transformed their work from a regulatory agency to more going out, working with employers, working with program sponsors, working with colleges and workforce boards to try to expand apprenticeship. And certainly I travel a lot, and wherever I go, I see apprenticeship and training representatives like yourself out there meeting with employers and meeting with colleges. And you know, you talked about the role of a college being an intermediary between an employer and the Department of Labor, the state apprenticeship agency. I think that's a great conversation. So is that true? Are you going out and getting more involved with employers and colleges, and how is that working?
That is correct. As a matter of fact, I was a panelist last week for the Gulf Coast Manufacturing Association, hosted by Houston Community College, and there was a number of employers there, and we plan on doing the same, using the same model with Houston Community College's Center for Manufacturing Excellence, because we set up and we asked, what do you want? What do you need? So when there was an exchange happening, so I see a renaissance, if you will, in apprenticeship. We're going through some internal therapy, if you will, as far as accepting change as an organization, and informal and informal sessions, because for so many years, as Eric mentioned, we were primarily a regulatory agency, and most of our workload involved just the traditional organized labor programs. But now we are innovating. Last year we did a cybersecurity and information technology program with J.P. Morgan Chase, who was a recipient of one of their American Apprenticeship Initiative grants. We did health information technology services, and I'm trying to think of some of the other non-traditional areas, but we've been all over the map in those non-traditional areas. So I was really happy to hear the outreach that was occurring to parents and to schools and to churches to change the image of apprenticeship, which in turn furthers the growth both on the employer's behalf and what they think and what the potential apprentice would think.
So great, James. So we got a question that flashed on the screen I saw a minute ago from, I think, Minnesota. And, you know, some states, you know, there might be an issue with colleges being sponsors, or, you know, program sponsors are in the intermediary space. And, you know, in my view, that's fine. And I'll sort of open this up to the three of you, right? I mean, you don't have to be a sponsor, right? You can choose to be a sponsor, which I think that positions the college well with the employer community and help. But there's other people who can become sponsors or intermediaries. Workforce boards in West Michigan, there's an excellent example, the West Michigan Workforce Board. They've become the program sponsor and working with the college to do that. Or there's a range of other partners that can be intermediaries. In Central New York, it's the Central New York Manufacturers Association that is an intermediary, and they're also brought community colleges in. And James, I'm wondering, any other examples you see? I mean, it doesn't have to be a college as a sponsor. Harper's decided to do that, but you know, you don't need to be that, right?
No, there can be other community-based organizations. For instance, we have Hope for U.S. Veterans serving as an intermediary and a sponsor for registered apprenticeship. And he probably has about 12 different employers who are signatory to his program. There are a number of different ways. What normally drives it is geography. and who can best serve from that location. But I would say in an area like Minnesota where the population density may not be as great, then that may be the right fit. In our case, in Harris County, because of the vastness of the county and the dispersion of the community colleges, it's a good fit. But geography normally drives it. What's practical for that person and that industry?
Right. And Rebecca Lake, I mean, you partnered up with a couple of industry associations.
Yeah.
Maybe they're sponsors in your particular place, but I know like this Manufacturing Association in New York I mentioned, but they could be. It doesn't have to be the college, right?
No, right. We can do the related training instruction. And so, for example, with Zurich has their own registered apprenticeship program in general insurance. I have it. Harper has it too. But I provide their related training instruction.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have with the German American Chamber is a registered apprenticeship program, and they have a few industrial maintenance mechanics that come through our program too. So community colleges truly pay, and it's the same program. I mean, we wouldn't reinvent the wheel and write another program. Everybody comes through one program. So whether I have the general insurance, Harper has the general insurance, or Aon or Zurich has it, it's the same general insurance program. The difference is when you get to, and I say to companies, we lay that foundation, but when they get to the company, and then that's when they really make sure they teach the apprentices the Zurich way or the Aon way.
Great.
Correct.
Great. All right. So James, I'm not going to go into too much detail on this, just to notify folks, because I heard Secretary of Labor Acosta speak yesterday at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce meeting, where they did a big workforce event in Washington, D.C. The Secretary has organized a task force on apprenticeship, made those appointments yesterday. He did announce that they are considering this new way to engage businesses more in apprenticeship with what they'll call industry-recognized apprenticeships. The rules and regs are not out on that yet. Department of Labor is working on that now, so I want to ask James to comment on them. But there is going to be a push to do more of these that are industry-based, industry association-based, sort of probably community and regionally based. And I think, for those who are listening, it's a real opportunity to get ahead of the game, to learn and connect as much as you can for apprenticeship, and to be, I think, go to DOL's website, look at the new executive order, get on their mail lists, so you can be kept up to date to what's going on that. James, any comments on that? I know I don't want to put you in the hot seat, but.
I would say go so far as to say this, Eric, if we continue to innovate at the clip that we're going, the burden when we talk about other people sponsoring apprenticeship programs, other entities, has been removed. So maybe we'll have a win in both areas. Certainly if they want an industry apprenticeship program only, that's fine. But we think that we can make it more accessible by the use of intermediaries and community colleges, because it really, for instance, I'll just be very blunt. Would they rather do 61 pages of paper with me or sign one piece of paper with a community college? I think that is a significant barrier being removed when we ask them to only sign the apprenticeship agreement. Would you agree or not?
I'll leave that to the professionals at the Department of Labor, but no workforce program is easy to put together, right? You do an industry sector model, a career pathways model, contract employment. It takes effort on the part of everybody, and I don't think apprenticeship is that much different, right? It takes effort.
Right.
There's forms to fill out. There's things to do in any workforce program that I've been involved in for the last 35 years. I think what our job is to sort of, and I think Rebecca did some of that, is to reduce the myth and misunderstanding about organizing apprenticeship program. You want a high-quality program, and believe me, registered apprenticeship programs are high quality. then there has to be a little bit of effort put out by everybody to make that happen. I think intermediaries and sponsors can make it easier for employers, and I think that's what we want to do, is make it easier for employers. So,
I think
yeah, go ahead, James.
If we're able to do that, we'll have the answer before they even tell us this is what they want us to do.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, back to Rebecca's earlier point, you know, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? There's hundreds of programs, thousands of programs and occupations and standards already developed. There are national programs. People share that. You know, Department of Labor has a database of existing programs, so it's not like you have to start from scratch. There's a framework there. The Urban Institute has issued, if you go to their website, competency frameworks for people to work on. So there's a lot of material already out there for the system to use and build on. So let me just go back to Melissa for a minute. Melissa, before, and just to the audience, you know, any questions, shoot them in the chat box or get them to us somehow or other. We'll try to answer them. You know, Melissa, in the few minutes that we have left, any other new opportunities on the horizon or perfecting what you're doing? What do you see going on in California?
Well, I have to be honest, I'm definitely going to follow up with Dr. Lake because we have a very strong cybersecurity program here, and so I'm excited to hear what she's doing there. So I feel like I should be in the audience as well as on the panel and learning from the conversation here. You know, it's the trick that the challenge that we continue to hear from employers is really kind of how labor intensive it could be and how will it be funded and a lot of those pieces. So I think really, and also the union piece can also be sometimes a non-starter or maybe have misconceptions for certain employers that maybe this means we're bringing a union program into their office or shop. So I think kind of demystifying it for employers and also making the lift easier can be helpful. You know, we transitioned a program here that had been a grant-funded program to try to make it an employer-funded model. And we found immediately that employers much prefer things that are free. So I think really learning and partnering with employers who are willing to put in a little bit of the skin in the game from the very beginning, and building something with the expectation that they will have to contribute, perhaps not monetarily, but maybe donating equipment, but also their time and their intellectual capital will be important to make clear for us from the beginning.
Sure. Well, most employers get involved with apprenticeship because of a pain point in finding the talent that's going to not just come and go, but come and stay with their company and build it. And so, you know, there's various levels of involvement. I think one of the biggest challenges, and, you know, Rebecca was lucky, Zurich Insurance knew apprenticeships from, you know, being a Swiss company. They already bought into it. They engaged, you know, there wasn't an argument to be made. They're already there. It's great to hear, Rebecca, about, you know, these other industries, non-traditionals, who have heard about what's going on with Zurich and Aon and the other companies in your region who have reached out as well, because I think one of the biggest challenges is breaking the stereotype of apprenticeship, building trades, and unions, which goes into everybody's mind, that it's just a learn and earn strategy where you can grow your own workers. I'm wondering what you've heard from those employers, Rebecca, and are you hearing that a lot more as you go around the country about from employers?
We're hearing that it's not quite a difficult bump as before because we're out there. We've been out there for 2 years, you know, and coming around because we had a AAI, an American Apprenticeship Initiative grant. So I have outreach folks that are trying to talk to companies. But you're right. Right now, the companies don't have a problem with the flat fee of how much we charge, and I can show you guys how that they can save some money on that, and so that it's not quite so painful to suppose the pocketbook of the companies. But you know, now they're starting to get it. It's sometimes the companies always said to us, "Well, I've never done anything that way. We never did it that way." Particularly the non-traditionals. But now, because they have seen, you know, we have 28 companies, other companies that are doing this, and we have people who will talk to them. You know, we have companies who say, "Listen, if anybody wants to talk to us, it doesn't matter what industry they're in, about does registered apprenticeship works and should I do it, we'll be glad to talk to them." So
Sure.
I'm not hearing that quite so much, that we never do this way, I'm never going to talk to you, but we're allowing we're encouraging companies to talk to each other about how to do that. And because we truly are, you know, with our academic coach bringing the students to completion, next year we'll be graduating the first of a 3-year program in advanced manufacturing. You know, we're completing. You know, we know how to do this. The GPA of all of our registered apprentices now is 3.61 over 4.0. Where do you find that? And the retention rate is 84%. Where do you find that? And do they have a job? It's 100%. You know, so we really feel like we've hit a winner, and that employers are really starting to be responsive.
Well, yeah, great observations. You know, I think you know, there's a lot of change in the air, a lot of new things going on out there, and I think, you know, the pedagogy or the learn and earn model, once people get over the stereotypes or their new understanding of what it can be, is working. There's a lot of questions about return on investment. I keep going back to a CEO I met in Switzerland, and then I go back to the vice president at Hayes Performance Systems, which I think is in Minnesota. He says, "Look, I don't need to see any ROI. I see it every day on the shop floor. I got people who are competent. They show up every day. They've stayed with us for a couple of years. We've grown our own workforce, and we're happy with it." There are some good studies out there on return on investment. There is a number of things that will be posted on our website at the Center for Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning soon. They're not up yet, but they will be. But, you know, everybody talks about the return on investment, and the employers that do this feel like they have the secret sauce, right? They found something, and they're all happy about it. It's the ones who aren't there yet that I think are the challenges. And I will also just take a moderator's privilege for a minute and say, you know, there's a lot going on in secondary systems of not pre-apprenticeship, but full range apprenticeship programs. There's 15 states that do programs in apprenticeship in high schools. There's 3 states that are doing really groundbreaking work. Colorado's doing it at scale. But they're working with their colleges to do enrollment, senior year of high school, into the first year of community college, for apprenticeship programs in a range of occupations. See it in Colorado, South Carolina, North Carolina, Kentucky, Wisconsin, and elsewhere. So, you know, there's other opportunities to get engaged besides running your own program and being a sponsor, and that's sort of being a partner in some of these existing high school programs, and you know, just do a little bit of searching and you'll see where they are. But A New America will be coming out with a new report on that next month, which will outline what 15 states are doing and a deeper dive on 3. So lots of opportunities. I think, you know, there's a big take up in high schools now with that dual enrollment, and more colleges are getting in the game. I will also say, you know, look, you can use Pell Grants for apprenticeship program. It takes a little bit of thought and planning, but you can use Pell Grants and work study funds to support the OJT. Work study funds can support the OJT portion, the on-the-job training portion of apprenticeship. If you organized a class of folks and they were Pell eligible, Pell can cover some of the related technical instruction costs. And I used my friends in West Michigan, the workforce board there. They did it all on their own, working with an ATR like James, to craft an apprenticeship program in healthcare IT. They're now on their 4th cohort. They do about 25, 27 students each time. They fund it all with their WIOA dollars. So they screen a class of WIOA eligible participants. They, again, screen them for the employers, and they use WIOA dollars to cover the costs of the related technical instruction with in a partnership with their community college. So there's other ways to fund it. You know, obviously, we'll have to keep an eye out to the Department of Labor to see if other grant opportunities come out from them. But there are other ways to fund that locally and regionally. and some states are putting their own money into it. California, Iowa, Connecticut, and others, who I'm not mentioning, have put state money into some of this. So it's growing and transforming as we speak. With that, let me give any other questions, Kelsey, on the line, shoot our way. Give you a minute for that. And, let me just sort of go down the line and just get some closing thoughts from all of you. I'll go reverse. James, I'm going to sort of go with you first. Any closing thoughts or last other tidbits of advice for people listening today? Okay, James, you may be on mute or we may have lost you. Let me go down to Melissa in Long Beach. Melissa, any other comments or observations?
I just really appreciate the community of learning and the opportunity to share and reflect on the work that we've done as kind of newbies to this. I think being able to hear from other folks and make connections with other folks is very helpful, and also to hear from the experts like yourself on this is very helpful. And I'm heartened by the optimism on the call as well, and how this is transitioning, and we have a lot of positive feedback from companies. So that makes me feel more inspired to continue this work.
Sure, and I think the consortium here can keep that conversation going. Melissa, I think that's a great point. And we can sort of get back with people and answer questions, or, do a deeper dive on this for the larger group down the road. We'll talk to Becky and Barbara about that. So Rebecca, some final thoughts or pieces of advice for folks?
Yeah, thanks, Eric. I think that I would encourage you to be extremely creative. I mean, get out of this box. This is a brand new ball game. I said to people, 2 years ago, I didn't even know it wasn't in my lexicon, registered apprentices, the words. And so now it is, and get out of the box, be creative. It's a win-win-win situation. It's a win for employers, it's a win for those job seekers, career changers, and it's a win for the college. So it's time to invest that creativity and a little bit of hard work, and it actually could pay off for you.
That's great. And I think community colleges can be at the center of that nationally. James, are you still on the line?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now, James. What final pearls of wisdom or suggestions about outreach, or what are some final thoughts to the folks on the line?
There's been a tremendous amount of valuable information that went out today. I don't want to repeat it. I will just, I pretty much have my head on a swivel, looking for new opportunities and new information as it becomes available. And I hope that our efforts here are as successful as the ones that we have listened to today. So I learned as much from listening to the other panelists as I certainly could have done from contributing anything. So thank you.
Well, thanks, James, and we appreciate your work out there in the field trying to create more of these partnerships out in your region of the country. And there's people like James all over the country, through the Department of Labor, through this growing intermediary community, people who know about this and can help put programs together. And I don't think there's any other questions coming in, but I want to, whether this is live or downloaded in the future, please reach out to us at the Center for Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning at Jobs for the Future, and certainly through the Community College Workforce Consortium. We all work together on this at JFF. And across the country, and we can certainly, respond back and get back to folks with any questions or issues that come up. And again, I'd love the opportunity to do a deeper dive with this group as things progress and the system continues to transform over time. So with that, I want to thank Melissa from Long Beach, Melissa Infusino from Long Beach, Rebecca Lake from William Rainey Harper College, and James Carn Sr. with the United States Department of Labor. And James, thank you for your service. Veterans Day is around the corner. You have a long service history in the military, so thank you for that before you joined the Department of Labor. And with that, thank you, panel. I'm going to turn it back over to Becky to take us on out. Becky?
Okay, thanks, Eric. Just a quick announcement. And first of all, thanks to our speakers for sharing all your expertise today, and we hope that you'll all be at the next face-to-face meeting because people may want to talk to you about some of the things you shared. We do look forward to seeing you at that CCWC meeting. It's scheduled for the pre-conference workshop day ahead of the Workforce Development Institute in New Orleans in January. The dates are January 29th for our beginning session with the reception and speaker, and then January 30th, a full day of peer sharing among the CCWC attendees. We will finish about 3:30 that day, and that will be in plenty of time for those of you who are staying for WDI to join the opening session later that afternoon. So again, thanks to our speakers. Hope we'll all see you in New Orleans.
Thank you.